crazy how a single number can have so much impact on our lives. Will you get to live where you want? Can you buy the car you want? Can you get some money to start a business? Our credit score can be the reason why we're able to do or not do all those things and more. And yet the way we get to that number can feel like a black box. Well, in this video, I'm going to shed some light into how your credit score gets determined and what you can do to improve your credit score. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to toss it a like and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. First things first, your credit score is a number that measures how likely you are to pay back borrowed money based on your history as a borrower. It starts with credit reporting agencies who keep track of your borrowing history starting from the first time you either open a credit card or take out a loan. There are three major credit reporting agencies, which are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Every month or so, these credit reporting agencies create what's called a credit report, which contains all the information that they have about you as a borrower. This includes any information about all of your open credit accounts, like your payment history, your outstanding balances, how much you're allowed to borrow on these accounts, and more. From there, they'll send that information over to a couple companies who have algorithms that take the credit reports, combine them, and then generate a credit score. The biggest of these companies that generate credit scores is FICO, but their main competitor, VantageScore, is pretty widely used too, so I'll talk about both throughout the video. This credit score is what creditors use to determine how risky you are as a borrower since, like I said before, your credit score ultimately measures how likely you are to repay borrowed money. Credit scores from both FICO and VantageScore are weighed on a scale from 300 to 850. The higher the score, the safer you are to loan money to. And this is why keeping a high credit score is so important. If you're a safe borrower, lenders would much rather lend money to you and are willing to provide benefits like lower rates and bigger loans just because you're less of a risk to them. Depending on where you look, you might see slightly different credit scores for yourself, and that's because FICO and VantageScore use the same factors to determine your score, but weigh them slightly differently. Let's dive into those factors. The first factor that goes into your credit score is your payment history. This is the single most important factor for both FICO and VantageScore, accounting for 35% of your FICO credit score and 40% of your VantageScore credit score. Lenders want to know how reliable you've been in the past with paying your bills and your credit accounts on time. So credit score providers will look at your payment history on your credit reports to see how many payments you've made on time, but more importantly, how many payments you've missed. This means that the number one thing that you can do to keep a good credit score is to always pay your bills on time. Even just one missed payment on a loan or a credit card can last on your credit reports for up to 7 years, even if you pay that missed payment late. Now, I don't want to scare you. Creditors usually don't tell reporting agencies about late payments until they're over 30 days late. The longer it's been since the missed payment, the less impact it'll have on your credit, especially if it was a one-time miss. But honestly, I would just avoid that risk altogether and make sure you pay your bills on time by setting up auto pay on any loans or credit cards that you can. Since this is such a big factor in determining your credit score, it's important that it's accurate. If you happen to be looking at your credit report and see a falsely reported missed payment, you can and should dispute it. Information on how to dispute your credit report can be found on the credit report itself, and you can pull your credit reports from all three major reporting agencies for free at annualcreditreport.com. The next factor in determining your credit score is your amounts owed. This is a measure of how much you rely on borrowed money and how responsible you are with it. FICO and VantageScore measure this by looking at how much outstanding balances you have on your credit accounts, how much credit you have available to you regardless if you use it or not, and most importantly, the percentage of available credit you actually do use, which is known as your credit utilization ratio. All these pieces combined account for 30% of your credit score from FICO, and in your credit score from VantageScore, it's broken out into credit utilization accounting for 20%, outstanding balances accounting for 11%, and available credit accounting for 3% for a combined total of 34% of your VantageScore credit score. It's important to remember that with credit, just because you have a bunch of credit available to you on a credit card, for example, doesn't mean that it's your money. To keep in good graces with lenders, you want to make sure that you aren't using too much of the credit available to you, since that makes you a riskier borrower in their eyes. So to avoid this, pay attention to your credit utilization ratio. Your credit utilization ratio is just your total outstanding balances on your loans divided by your total limits on your loans. To keep a good credit score, you want your credit utilization ratio to be under 30%. But to get an excellent credit score, you really want this number to be between 1 and 10%. Now, looking at the formula for credit utilization, there are two main ways we can improve this number. First, you can lower the numerator by reducing your credit usage. To reduce your credit usage, you first should make sure that you're not overspending on your credit cards. But if you're not overspending on your credit cards, there's also another thing you can do. The thing about credit utilization is that credit card companies report this to the reporting agencies once a month, usually at the end of your billing cycle. So what you can do is, when it gets close to the end of your billing cycle, pay down your balance if you can so that your credit card company reports the lowered balance, making you look better to lenders. Don't pay it off completely, since you still want your credit card company to bill you so you can make an on-time payment, since that also helps your credit score. Now, going back to the formula, the other thing you can do to improve your credit utilization is raise the denominator by getting more available credit. If you're a good borrower and make your payments on time consistently, your credit card company may offer you a credit line increase. Credit card companies sometimes will also raise your credit line if you just ask, especially if your income goes up. Either way, a credit line increase is good for your credit, but remember, just because you have more credit doesn't mean you have more money, so don't use it as an excuse to spend more. The other thing you can do to keep your available credit higher is to keep old credit cards under your name that don't cost anything to carry, even if you don't use them. If you cancel a credit card, the available credit line on that card will go away, and that would raise your credit utilization ratio, which, as we know, is bad. And not canceling old credit cards also helps out with the next factor that determines your credit score, which is your depth of credit. With depth of credit, credit score providers measure how much experience you have with managing debt. The more experience you have, the better borrower that makes you in lenders' eyes. There are two main ways FICO and VantageScore measure your depth of credit. They look at the types of debt you held, also known as your credit mix, and they also measure how long you've held your credit, also known as your length of credit history. For FICO, length of credit history accounts for 15% of your credit score, and credit mix accounts for 10%, which adds up to a combined 25% of your credit score. For VantageScore, these factors combined make up depth of credit, which accounts for 21% of your credit score. With credit mix, lenders like to see that you have experience managing different types of credit accounts. And there are two main types of credit accounts that they consider. The first is known as revolving accounts, and these are accounts that give you a limit on how much you can take at a time, but also give you flexibility on when and how much you can take from it, as well as how much you need to pay back each month. The most common example of revolving accounts are credit cards, but this can also include home equity lines of credit. The other type of credit accounts are called installment accounts, and this is any loan where the money is lent to you in full at the beginning and requires you to pay a fixed payment every month until the balance is fully paid off. Some common examples of installment accounts you might see on your credit report are mortgages, student loans, and car loans. Since credit mix accounts for a smaller percentage of your credit score, it's usually just not worth it to open loans for the sake of trying to improve your credit score, so don't worry about this factor too much. Moving on to length of credit history, lenders most notably look at the age of your oldest account, but they also consider your average and youngest account age. The longer your credit history, the better, so avoid canceling old credit cards if there isn't any cost with leaving them open. And if you don't have credit, start building credit as soon as possible. You can do this by opening a starter credit card or a secured credit card, or by becoming an authorized user on the credit card of someone you trust. The last factor in determining your credit score is your new and recent credit. Credit score providers weigh your recent borrowing habits to get a sense of if you're currently in a bind financially. For FICO, this factor accounts for 10% of your credit score, and for VantageScore, this accounts for 5%. With new credit, there are two main things credit score providers take into account. The first is new accounts. If you open a lot of new credit cards or take out a bunch of different loans in a short period of time, that might raise some eyebrows with lenders. The other thing they look at is recent hard inquiries. A hard inquiry is a deep dive into your credit history that usually happens when you apply for a credit card or loan that requires a decision. Not all credit checks are bad, and sometimes when you or a lender wants to get a preview of your credit history without impacting your score, They can do what's called a soft inquiry, which has no impact on your credit score. But hard inquiries are a much more detailed look into your credit history and can temporarily ding your credit score. That being said, the impact is usually pretty small and only lasts about a year or two, and there are even situations where making hard inquiries don't even impact your credit score at all. Just be mindful of when these do happen and only apply for loans when you need to. Now, I know we just went through a ton of information, but understanding the factors that determine your credit score as well as the things you can do to achieve a great credit score will only benefit you. So if you need to go back and listen to anything again, I strongly recommend that you do. And if you have any questions, toss them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. But with that, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button and smash that subscribe button to see more videos like this one.